Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm Amari, your Perpetual Tech Noob, learning more with you. Today I'm going back to a Noob's build. I'm sure you saw the Algo, my first Algo challenge that I horribly failed. But getting past that, what we're talking about is the items that I built for that challenge. There were, I think, 3 things in particular. There was the opening scene, which also doubled as my thumbnail. If you watched it, I'm sure you know. I also figured it would be good to show the assessment rubric that I made. Of course, all these things are with JavaScript. There's no need for me to use React with such small scripts. So HTML, CSS, JavaScript, the regular degulars, you know how it go. And of course, the final assessment for the Algo challenge. Basically, it's going to be a template from what I'm going to be using from now on. So I figure I just give a quick rundown of those 3. Hopefully you could have a good time watching it. We might as well start off with the opening scene. As you can see, I like to go to W3 schools to brush up from time to time when I'm forgetting certain terms. The animations were done with simple CSS. There was no JavaScript in this particular folder. It's not a code along, so I'll be running through this pretty fast, but you can feel free to pause it, of course. For those who are new to coding, you might even want to copy this script down as an example. There's no better teacher than experience. So if you just start trying to break things, basically, you'll find out what a lot of things do, and you'll get a little more acclimated with the error messages. As you can see, I used the intro episode as a basic template, but of course there was a lot of things that had to change. I added a little animation on the catchphrase that's gonna slide all the way from out of frame at the bottom all the way to the top at the very end. I put it on a 6-second animation duration, and as you can see, I have it where it is not moving until halfway through that 6-second duration. If you remember at the very beginning, that announcing text in its oval bubble pops out over the announcement of the Algo challenge. As you can see here from the keyframes, I have it hidden at first, and I have a Z index at 1 so it stays behind the wording, and then it pops in front of it, expands, rotates, and then goes back down. Because see, as you can see, it goes from 36 PT, 36 points, back down to 24 points at the end. And that's basically it for anything of importance in this particular folder. As you can see, I am not the best at photo editing. By trap. All right, the next one on the list, the 1-hour Algo assessment rubric. I left that red border on it for a small portion of that spin, just to bring a little bit more attention to it. I know it wasn't really necessary, and as I'm sure you've seen, I didn't keep it when I actually assessed my performance. Alright, I'm sure you've realized that I like to use that WebKit text fill and WebKit text stroke. That separation of color, that let's say that individual border for every particular letter, I really like that kind of style. I'm sure you also probably noticed that I use border 2px solid red a lot I'm sure a lot of you have guessed it already, is for testing mostly, except for that little portion right here where I put it on the pop-out keyframe. I'm sure you remember sliding from the last video. As you can see, there's been slight changes, but it's still sliding. Alright, and that's about it for the CSS. Let's go to the script. You all may remember this script from the first A Noob's Build episode, which was the second half of my introduction episode. This function with the on-screen add event listener, right? Listening for clicks. Anytime I click on that particular div that is labeled screen right now, this function will take place. And if the count is below the number of items in the list, then it will continue to move forward through this list, changing the class names in these particular branches of the DOM, right? So right now, this particular part of the function, the first part of the function, is so that I could grab the first class name and replace it, because I'm going to change the class names holistically for every item. So I want to make sure that I re-grab the class name first, second, third, fourth, fifth, all that good stuff, because those will be different in every class. And like I said, those are what I'm using to actually control those items. So I want to make sure that I put those names back. And this, as you can see, I'm changing the second class from hidden to slide in. Every time we do that, of course, we'll add 1 to the count to make sure that we're going to move on to the next item in the new items list. When it finally comes to pass that I have actually dealt with everything on the new list, then I added a little function to reset the list. This reset list function changes all items, the class names of all items, back to hidden. It resets the counter back to 0 as well. In my major function, if I have reached the end of new list and I do press the screen again, this will reset everything for me so that I don't have to refresh the screen to reset it. I could just make one more click. Now that that's over, slight demo, I'm sure you've seen it already. Me clicking on the side to show you that that is not the area where I could click to make the function work. The div is actually shaded. Yeah, evidently anywhere on this div can be clicked. Okay, moving on to the last mini project, because these are really just extremely small projects. But the last one was for the rundown of my particular algo assessment. But of course, I might as well make a template, right? So here's a working example. Of course, it's the same just about as the other ones. When I'm doing it fast, you can see that the elements have to shift dynamically to sit properly because of my animations increasing the size of the text. But when I do them individually, they come through pretty smooth. And they go to mission failure. I'm sure you've seen that from me before. Yeah, the mission failure end message if I had failed the mission. All right, let's take it to the code. All right, as you can see, the index is extremely primitive, right? Extremely simple. I have the things that I definitely know I'm going to need sitting there, set up my class names. A little difference that you might realize is that instead of having first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, whatever the list items are that are going to pop in, instead of having them as class names and having to change that class name so much in my little function, I could just put those as IDs instead. so that way my function would be a little bit more simpler, more succinct. As you can see, I have a p tag in there that's empty right now and hidden, and that is where the final message is going to be, as I'm sure you figured from its class. And in this case, I had to get a lot more elements, and I decided to get them by their ID instead of a general query. I don't think that'll be any faster, but it's like, why look for a general query and have to add an extra character? That extra character is tough on the fingers. This is where I put today's info. The things that will be on the top regarding which particular LeetCode challenge, and the score. Now, the score is important because, as you can see with the functions right under it, I have particular styles that I'm going to implement. So if you get a score lower than 70% of that particular section, the number will come back red. If you get between 70 and 90%, the number will come back yellow. And of course, if you get 90 and above, the number will come back green. When it comes to the final message finder, the final message will be different based on if you passed, if you had a regular score, a decent score, or if you got in the 90th percentile. Now, I'm hoping to one day see that word pass by my screen to say I did stellar work, but we're working on it, right? We're building towards that, right? So in this section, this is where I change the inner HTML and the color, if necessary, of every individual score point. First point, second point, third point. Those are the actual points. The final message, I refer back to the function to find out what my final message is going to be. After I find the final score, of course, which is up here. And the final message style, the color, is going to change accordingly with the final score that comes in. So this is just to set up the inner HTML and the color style of the individual score points based on what I actually scored. Of course, we all remember this part, working on new list items. For every time I click the div, I still have my reset list function and my add event listener. I changed up reset list just a little bit to make sure that the final message is hidden as well. But can you see not say the bug, but can you see where I went wrong with this code? You can pause it to figure it out, but I'll just tell you while we're here. Final message, the class name for final message, does not need to be changed to hidden every single time that count is, decreased. I could have made that a part of the function that goes after the while loop. Moving on. When it comes to the screen click function, you can see that I no longer have to go crazy with finding the first class in there, because now they're controlled by their IDs. So that class name that I used to keep in there, that could be put in the ID, and there's less changes for me. So only thing I really have to change is from hidden to sliding. And I have it where if the count reaches the final item, it's going to wait 7 seconds. That's what the 7,000 is for. It's going to wait 7 seconds before it changes the class name from hidden to final message, where it starts that animation. And of course, we have the reset list function at the bottom of that. Okay, here's the animation for sliding. And there go your animation for final message. Halfway through it, as you can see, we do nothing. Because in the last 3 seconds, it actually gets to work, sliding out or popping out. This is the point section. Of course, as you can see, points is empty. right? Because we're going to fill it in with what we want later on. That's going to be controlled by the script. Let's just change up the scores a little bit and see what it looks like. When I get between the 70 and 90% range, the score will come back as yellow. Why was live explanation red? The regular success message is yellow. Let's make everything the max and see what's going on. Because evidently it was supposed to be yellow, but okay, live explanation is still coming back red, even at the max score. And there go my stellar work. But there's something wrong with live explanation. Evidently I have to go back and change it. Oh, I put in the wrong function. Let's try it again. Hey, got my greens. All right, we're back on track. I gave it the function for total score, so of course 40 would be so below 70% of 100. All right. And that's about it. All right, y'all. Until next time, you know how it goes. Keep building.